And I'm flat out on the floor and Willie's running a mile.
My whole thing was men together and stick together. And Phil said, hold on, I can't get up.
I'm saying, Willie, you know, what about the team spirit now, you know? And he shouted like every man for himself, you know.
It's most unfair because I took him home.
But I remember sort of waking up early hours the next morning, sort of in a small bed with a big man's arm around me, and there was nothing sinister in it, but he couldn't find my hut, so I slept in the bed, and that was a great laugh, a great fun. And we took some stick from the boys about that, you know.
There was a bit of friction on that tour between the Scots and the English, in a sense, a little bit of tension there, caused by the fact that Scotland had been quite successful, and you know there was a bit of a nationalistic feeling which took a bit of time to get over on the tour.
The moment now for Finlay Calder, really the moment of truth this for the British Isles. Far Jones, liner, little chip and chase, Robert Jones covering liners there.
We actually started very well in the first test. And then we made mistakes, and they punished us. And they punished us heavily. I mean, it was 30 points to 12 or whatever it was.
Half-back and straight through for the try is fullback Martin.
No Lions side had ever won a series having lost the first test. And if, as was suggested, they'd been psyched out of that first match by the Australians' physical approach, when it came to the second test, it was payback time.
And here, the day of days for Finlay Calder.
We arrived on the ground. I can still see it. We got off the bus and here come the lions, you know, and here come the pussycats, and they're all meowing at us. I says, oh, I don't think this is a very good idea. We were getting seriously tense about the whole thing to begin with.
The way we would win would be taking control up front. We knew we had to irritate Far Jones. That was Rob's job, and he did that very well.
Talking to Nick Far Jones, he was fairly certain, as was our coach, who was fairly vocal about it, Bob Dwyer at the time. They saw the way to upset us was to stop the flow of the ball from the forwards to the backs, and the best way to do that is to disturb and upset our halfback, who happened to be Nick.
This has broken into total free-for-all, which is the last thing we wish to see, and yet at times one sensed there was going to be something of a physical confrontation.
Bob Dwyer, the Australian coach, subsequently called us a bunch of animals and accused us of, you know, kicking and biting our way to victory.
Yeah, it probably did upset Nick a little bit and put him off his game and started him thinking about other things, as it did the rest of our forwards, who then became involved in running battles all day.
Players getting rough again as one or two boots were going in. Brian Moore's incensed.
When you get Southern Hemisphere guys sort of complaining about tactics, that's when you know you got them on the run, so that was nice.
At half-time in the second test, with the Wallabies on top, the Lions were staring defeat in the face again, and with it, the loss of the series.
Probably 9-0 down at one stage, but we kept playing. But the difference was we kept their pack working very hard, which meant opportunities were just starting to open up. And crucially, in the last 10 minutes, I think it was, of the game, suddenly it was all there. We scored wide.
It out to Rob Andrew. There must be a man over here, surely. The pass is loose and bouncing, but Gavin Hastings picks up and hands off the man for the try.
And then straight from the kick-off, we came back, put a high ball up. You know, it was dropped by David Campese. We were straight in on that. We were running at them again, and suddenly our whole game had just opened up.
I remember we got the ball back and out to Jerry.
Everybody worked so hard to get into that position before I scored the try, and I remember Finlay Calder saying,
and he kicked it. I went, what are we doing this for?
And I saw that bloody Guscott kick the ball away and thought, you know what?
Guscott, little chip and chase, it's beautifully placed, Guscott's there!
And it started up into his hands and touchdown. Good idea, Jerry.
Oh, go on, oh, well done. Great try.
That's it, I'm with you in that.
Guscott, what a try, that must seal it.
It was brilliant, absolute, just genius.
But when I scored that try, after running back and being congratulated by most of the players,
a brilliant moment of individual skill.
You had that sense of, you can imagine it, watching a film and seeing a TV screen of the main action, and then in the background you'd have pictures of playing mini rugby, then in the junior section, and then as Colts, and it all just came flooding back. But it happened in the space of 5 seconds, the whole of my rugby life up until that point.
We actually went into the third test really on the up. They made Australia work very, very hard for anything, which frustrated the halfbacks. You know, in a way, they almost panicked a little bit to try and get the momentum back in it. The only thing we didn't do is we'd had all the possession and all the position. We didn't nail it with a couple of tries in the first half. We did kick penalties. Gavin Hastings kicked superbly well. And then, you know, Michael Liner scored a good try, dummying his way through almost.
So the series was balanced on a knife edge. One moment of brilliance, one error of judgment could decide it.
Sometimes big games, that's what happens, you know. Pressure tells and little mistakes, which can end up costing games. But this drop goal attempt was from just near the 10-yard line, and it went flying off the side of the boot up in the air, and I went chasing dutifully like a good dog after the ball, and it bounced up. It was just a mix-up between the full back, Martin, and Campo, and I think one called, the other one didn't realise what was going on. The ball went loose, and I just sort of barged my way through and fell on the ball about 6 inches from the line, and that was it. It was a try. It was definitely a try.
Campese off on his travels again and in dire straits.
I remember watching that from about the 22 metre line, and I just sort of sunk to my knees. It was, because that was it.
One of those disastrous moments in Campese's rugby life.
Moment that will go down in history. We all felt pretty sorry for him and for what he'd done, and that was the series right there.
The British Isles have won the test. They've won the series. It couldn't be more dramatic.
The difference between the 74 tour, 77 tour and the 89, the 90s tours is that they're much shorter. But in fact all they do is they get rid of the easier games. So you're challenged every time you play. So at the beginning you've got to have it right.
The morale is fairly high, but there was a distinct set of players who did not fully come to terms with what the Lions Tour was all about.
You try and keep all the players involved because they all have, you know, they all have to be seen to have a chance to make the test side.
Whether you're in the test team or not, you have to bite your tongue and you have to do what's best for everybody else. And if that doesn't happen, you do get a division, you do get a split, and it's very difficult just then for 21 guys to pull it off.
I have no doubt about it that you would certainly pick a different squad of players after an 8-week tour than the ones that you chose prior to that tour, because you find out people when you're on tour.
Well, as professionalism edged over the horizon, many people believe that British rugby was being left behind. And certainly the attitude of the midweek Dirt Trackers team in 1993 attracted a great deal of adverse publicity. But on this trip, as with so many others before it, but for one hugely controversial refereeing decision, things might have been very different.
Well, this is it, one way or another. If he kicks it, I think the All Blacks will win the test match. If he misses it, they'll lose it. So one of the biggest tests he's ever had. Tough penalty on Dean Richards, I must say.
Frank Bunce came with the ball, and then I just enveloped him, turned him over. The ball was presented our side. Our pack started to brook over the top, and he wouldn't release a ball on the floor. And the referee, for some unknown reason, gave the penalty to New Zealand. The ball was coming at our side. I'd turned him quite legitimately, and he penalised me for holding on to the ball on the floor.
That is one of my greatest, sort of biggest disappointments in sport, and you know, I always recall the look on Dowie Morris's face as the referee awarded the penalty against, and it seemed incredible that he could do so. It was a crushing moment in you know, our destiny, I think, to win another Test series in New Zealand.
And it's over. Grant Fox puts the All Blacks back in the lead, 20 points to 18 with less than a minute left.
We played pretty well in the first test. We defended very well, and we could have won it. And the second test was, everybody was pretty confident that if we could do what we wanted to do and control certain phases, that we'd win. And it went better than we expected.
There we go. The bomb under the posts for Hastings. He's out in the field of play.
They'd scored again early on, I think, with a kick and chase, and Gavin had spilled it and they got in. But we kept battling at them. I think our line-out went very well. We nicked quite a few of their balls. Martin Bayfield had a very big game.
When you have two evenly matched teams, it's a battle of wills, and who has the right attitude to, who's going to make that 50-50 ball, and we had the attitude on the day.
And we just got better and better. I thought we played very well that day, because we'd almost got for the first time to sort of multi-stage rugby. We played with a single-mindedness, I think, which surprised the All Blacks, and I think that was their biggest Test defeat.
Chance if they can work that away, and Rory Underwood, has he got the legs on him? Yes, he has. What a great try! taking the chances only he can. He just needs that.
Within 7 days, they turned it around. You know, with Martin Bayfield had been so dominant in the first 2 tests. In the third, he was, you know, you wouldn't know he was on the field. They worked out what we were doing, how we were going to do it, and they nullified Bayfield, and pretty much that was our game plan destroyed.
We knew they'd challenged the line out, and we'd worked on some short line out plays and 1 or 2 other things, and actually started very well. I think we went 10-0 up.
Winterbottom, this time they release it. Little gap for Underwood. Could he get the pass away? No, but there's still trouble. A great take.
The Lions could smell victory, but New Zealand scored crucially just before half-time, and that was that. All hopes of winning the series evaporated as the All Blacks ran away with the match.
We didn't play well in the third test. You know, New Zealand stepped up a gear, no doubt about that. And we're worthy victors of that test.
Once again, the mighty All Blacks have come back.
The 93 Lions failed to match the achievements of their counterparts in 71, so the pressure was on the first professional side, led by Martin Johnson in 1997, to repeat the feats of Willie John's team 23 years earlier. They were undoubtedly the best prepared squad in history. Several rugby league players returning to the fold, augmented by a backup staff of 12. The Springboks were the world champions, and they had a special trophy minted to mark their inevitable series victory. It didn't quite turn out like that.
Come on then, no regrets, come on!
It's a number of things that pulls you together. Certainly in '97 it was, if you're an underdog, you know, you want to prove people wrong. And when you think you've got 36 players there who are competitive by nature because they play for their respective countries, they want to do well.
South Africa made crucial mistakes. They didn't play their top players in any of the provincial games, and therefore many of their top players hadn't had first-hand experience of playing against the Lions, and I think that was a mistake to have done that.
I think coming to the first test we'd had 1 defeat against Northern Transvaal, but in all the other games we'd tried to play a certain brand of rugby. The players had enjoyed it and we'd scored a lot of tries and so on, given entertaining rugby. And so within our own group we had a belief that we had a formula to beat the Springboks, because we knew that they were very sort of focused on a certain kind of defence and a certain kind of attack. They try to bully you up front, they try to then bring runners and hit you in midfield and then tie you in and then try to move it wide. They play at that time a very basic kind of rugby, and we were trying to play a far more expansive game than they were, and if we had the guts to do it properly and the nerve to do it, then Ian maintained we could get away with it.
Andrews, Durant.
We made a few mistakes in the first half, and I remember them being very nervous, and we took advantage of that. And I think we knew that whenever we got into situations where we could score, their discipline was tested to the limit, and 9 times out of 10 they gave away penalties, and Neil Jenkins was the perfect answer.
And the Lions extending their lead.
We had an inner belief that if we were within 5 or 10 points with 10 minutes to go, the fitness and the confidence in the team to play a certain kind of way would come through and we'd get the results.
The game hinged at one point late in the second half where we were falling behind and we really needed to produce something more than just 3 points. Unfortunately, I'm sure everyone will remember Matt Dawson's try, which owed much really to the front row, who'd managed to just to turn that scrum enough for him to get outside the flanker.
It's a good break on Matt Dawson, and look at the dummy. Can he get away? Yes, he can, and the Lions are in the lead. That's a brilliant break by Matt Dawson.
We were overwhelming favourites because they are arrogant, you know, the South Africans, they are, there's no doubt about that. They seem to think that they would have won the World Cup in '87 and '91 if they'd been in it.
I think what annoyed us immensely as well is when you pick up the papers the next day and the reports are kind of South Africa throwing it away rather than the British Lions winning.
Tate has wrapped it up for the British Isles.
But I mean that's the nature of the beast in South Africa. They blame themselves rather than give credit to anyone else. But we realised that South Africa would come back even harder and stronger.
We knew they'd come at us, so we tried to mentally prepare our players. Now I was a forward pack leader, and I told them if you thought that it was hard last week in the first test, it'll be 10 times as hard now. And I think some of the players froze a little bit in the second test, thinking, well, they'd done it once, all we need to do is to do the same again, but it's not like that against the South Africans.
I think it was incredibly demanding because we didn't see the ball. I mean, I can count on one hand how many times I touched the ball in the entire game, so that gives you an idea of what I was doing. But I think that the crucial thing from our point of view was that we never gave up, and there were times when we were penned right back in our own 22 and we couldn't get out. The pressure was just relentless. Early on in the game, we've been under intense pressure. They'd missed 2 penalties. The first time we get up into their half, we get a penalty just inside their half on the halfway line, you know, right in front of the post. But I mean, it's a 50-metre kick, and he steps up and he's just seen them miss 2, and he put it straight between the middle of the post. And I think that just gave us the confidence, and we thought it might just be our day.
And it's another brilliant kick by Jenkins.
It was a similar game to the first test in some ways, that they scored early on, Van der Westhuizen scored, and that had to do with pressure, and he sold a little dummy, and his strength and speed got him in. But we came back and it was the same. Whenever we got on the attack, we didn't maintain any pressure on them because we seemed to be scoring a penalty every time we got into their half.
We went in front, but I just felt we were just not taking it to them as we should. And then, of course, we gave a try away straight after half-time.
Now the Lions in some sort of trouble. Tate's in possession, and Honeyball comes away. Van Skartwyk, Percy's going to get his try. Honeyball reading it well, gets it away to Andre Yabert, and Andre Yabert bounces off Berkey. The touch charge, it keeps his flag down.
If they'd have kicked their goals, maybe they would have been out of sight by that time, but they didn't. We got back into the match, and Jenks kept us in there, you know, kept pegging back a few points here and there.
Trying to black out the crowd is mostly the most important thing, especially when you've got about 50,000 South Africans screaming at you. You know, you pick your target in the goalpost and, you know, just total concentration. More or less, just try to imagine him on the training park and nothing else, basically.
His technique, his composure, quite incredible. The thing he did was every time South Africa got it wrong, he damaged them.
Used to it, over 50 internationals, and he draws the scores level.
You know, the decisive factor really was that we only gave away 1 penalty in the entire second half. If you can keep your discipline to that level, then you've got a real chance of winning the game. We moved the ball wide, and Alan Tate got caught in a ruck right on the touchline, and he was about to get turned over, and Neil Back came from nowhere and won a ball, as he does so often, that he had no right to win. Matt Dawson didn't even realise it had been won, and Keith Wood picked it up and kicked it the length of the field and set up the position from which we scored the drop goal. So I can't remember too much about it because I was buried at the bottom of the ruck trying to win the ball.
Matt looked up to me, more or less turned away, and at Jerry, I think, his fellow teammate English. No, I think Jerry was in a perfect position.
You see these moments in sport, you think of that guy or that person, that woman who did that. Suddenly you're in that position and you've been given an opportunity and it goes through, and it's really totally bizarre. And then although pandemonium, there's still 3 minutes to go. Anything could have happened.
You kind of knew South Africa wouldn't settle for the draw. I mean, there was times in the last couple of minutes when they could have dropped a goal themselves, levelled the series, but they wanted a win because that's their way. And all we had to do really was defend.
Is Jenkins going to win the race? It depends how it bounces. Jenkins gets...
At the death there, I asked the referee how long, and he said, well, the next time the ball goes out, it's game over. So I said to Neil Jenkins, just belt the thing out off the 22.
And I had Lauren shouting, kick it out, someone else shouting, kick it out, someone else, no, keep it in just in case. So in the end, I just belted it out. Well, I didn't have a clue whether he's going to blow up or not. I was just hoping, and I kicked it out, and I could see him walking back. I thought, no, not a scrum.
He was true to his word, blew the whistle, and that was it. Everybody just went mad.
The amount of support and noise at the end, and the look on the players' faces, you think, well, it's all, that's what's worthwhile, because you've brought a group of players to win a test series that they'll never forget for the rest of their lives. All the atmosphere around them are totally unique. You know you're in something special.
I was absolutely physically exhausted. I'd given everything, as had the whole team. And it was just great just to enjoy that moment, because you talk about achievements in rugby. I mean, they don't get much bigger than that. And you've just really got to savour that moment and savour it really with the whole squad. And that's why the rest of the squad joined us, and the management and everyone else. And we saluted the support we got because it was tremendous.
Never won against New Zealanders or the South Africans before. To win a series was unbelievable. For me, having had since so many batterings and defeats for the Lions, it was awesome.
Anyone on that trip will find it very hard to build up something like that again. It's just one of those moments in time in life that you're privileged to be part of.
Defeat in the third test couldn't take the gloss off a fantastic series victory, and the story of the Lions in the 20th century ended where it had begun, in Durban. In 1924, the Lions had lost their very first test match to the Springboks by 7 points to 3, and Jeremy Guscott's drop goal, 75 years on, ensured this unique sporting institution will live on well into the next millennium.
You will meet these guys that you've played with 30 years, 40 years down the line, and you may not even say a word, but you'll know that he was there, I was there, and what great times we had.
Utley to Ripley. Ripley busting as he did for London Counties. Tony Leary going for the corner. A dramatic last second try.
I've got friends that have become lifelong friends. We went through battles, so to speak, for a duration of time, but it's lasted a lifetime.
Slattery with men outside him, inside beautifully to Phil Bennett. Look at that acceleration. Bennett with Billy Steele. Bennett on his own.
And when you go away for 3.5, 4 months, and your mates, and you leave Heathrow to go back home at the end of the tour, and you shake hands, I'm not ashamed to say it, you shed a tear or two because you're saying so long to a friend that stuck by with you for 3 to 4 months.
Great turn of speed, the jink inside. Bennett to McBride, to Mervyn Davies, to McBride again, to Gordon Brown, Gareth Edwards.
They gave me a little sort of water jug at the end, and it means so much to me, and it just says on it, it was great to travel with you. Just those few words, but it's one of my treasures.
In the course of making this programme, we've chatted to many of the all-time rugby greats about their very special memories as British Lions, but inevitably we could only use a fraction of these wonderful reminiscences on this video. But they haven't gone to waste. Imagine sharing an evening at home with legends of rugby in your own sitting room, and you've grasped the idea of Lion Talk. 3 videos which expand on the mystique and the nostalgia of the Lions. For just £12.99 and package and posting, you can savour more than an hour of the romantic era. Cliff Morgan, Tony O'Reilly, Dickie Jeeps, Blethen Williams and Jack Matthews on the glorious 1950s when the Lions were about playing attractive rugby and having fun. The great double, Willie John McBride, Barry John, Gareth Edwards, JPR and JJ Williams, Fergus Slattery, Phil Bennett and many others on the 1971 and 74 triumphs in New Zealand and South Africa when British rugby was at its zenith. And then the professional era, Ian McGeechan, Finlay Calder, Jeremy Guscott, Gavin Hastings, Lawrence Dallaglio and Jim Telfer on the recent tours to South Africa, New Zealand and Australia. Or you can get the full set of 3 for the special price of just £34.99 plus postage and packing. To order Lion Talk, and you can't buy them in the shops, simply send the card included in this video case with your cheque. Or you can phone 0181 671 0652 for credit card orders, and then sit back and enjoy them. And for each video sold, we've agreed to make a donation to Wooden Spoon, the rugby charity that enjoys a special relationship with the Lions and supports a host of good causes.